So here are the following subtopics: criteria in evaluating the curriculum, perspective in curriculum evaluation, and using the results of the evaluation. So we have here the first one, criteria in evaluating the curriculum. First, let us define what are curriculum criteria. Curriculum criteria are guidelines on standard for curriculum decision making. Criteria will determine the different levels of competencies or proficiency of acceptable task performance. The criteria are stated in the form of questions as follows. First, have the goals of the curriculum or teaching plan been clearly stated? And are they used by teachers and students in choosing content, materials, and activities for learning? Number 2, have teacher and students engage in student-teacher planning in defining the goals and in determining how they will be implemented? Number 3, do some of the planned goals relate to the society or the community in which the curriculum will be implemented or the teaching will be done? Fourth one, do some of the planned goals relate to the individual learner and his or her needs, purposes, interests, and abilities? And the fifth one, are the planned goals used as criteria in selecting and developing learning materials for instruction? Sixth, are the planned goals used as criteria in evaluating learning achievement and in further planning of learning sub-goals and activities? The objectives of a curriculum or teaching plan are the most important curriculum criteria, since they should be used in selecting learning experiences and evaluating learning achievement. Second, this is the second subtopic, which is perspective and curriculum evaluation. Curriculum evaluation is a process and a tool. Process because it follows procedure based on models and frameworks. Tools because it helps to judge the worth and merit. And for the result, it is the basis to improve the curriculum. Approaches to curriculum evaluation. As previously stated, curriculum evaluation serves to identify the strengths and the weaknesses of the curriculum before implementation and the effectiveness of its delivery after implementation. So, evaluation enables educators to identify alternative curricular actions and determine various combinations of curricula to ensure maximum student learning in the light of overall program goals. So the first one that we are going to talk about is the formative and summative evaluation. The formative evaluation aims to improve an existing program based on the feedback obtained from the evaluation. Hence, program developers must be frequently involved with detailed and specific information to guide them in the developmental phase. On this basis, evaluators can revise the program while it is being developed before it can be implemented on a large scale. Formative evaluation can occur at several stages during the curriculum development process. At any stage, the validity of the content can be checked. For example, whether the students are achieving the stated goal or objectives by going through the content. If not, then that content could be modified. The summative evaluation assesses the effect of a complete program. The effectiveness of the entire curriculum can be assessed through summative evaluation or also of a particular program or course within the curriculum. This type of evaluation is based on evidence about summed effects of various components or units in the curriculum, and hence it derives its name from it. The people involved in the curriculum process can conclude how successfully the curriculum has worked. Since summative evaluation is carried out at the end of the curriculum activity, it should not be construed as one-time affair only. It can occur at the end of some curricular or unit plans. Summative evaluation could also be planned at certain points during the curriculum development process. For example, at the end of the first tryout stage before the final implementation. This would help evaluators to check a curricular program as it evolves into the final product. Whereas formative evaluation uses informal methods and processes. The summative evaluation uses formal tools for gathering data. Tests are carefully designed for the attainment of objectives. So, teachers' reactions are assessed formally through carefully prepared surveys. Students are assessed through tests at the end of the course or at the end of the school year or at the year end. One of the main purposes of summative evaluation is to select from several completing curricular programs, the one which should be accepted and those which should be discontinued. Now let's move on to the second approach, which is scientific and humanistic approach. Scientific approach is probably the oldest approach to curriculum evaluation as it dates from modernism and the emphasis on the scientific method of the 19th to 20th century. So this approach to curriculum evaluation focuses on using quantitative data generated by the learners. So this allows for statistical analysis. And furthermore, the results are compared in order to determine the level of success. This comparison is at the heart of the decision making when this approach is employed. The humanistic approach looks at the individual rather than the numbers. Data is much more qualitative in nature. The rationale behind this is that life has multiple perspectives to it and quantitative data only provides one perspective. Humanistic evaluators want to understand the complexities of the environment they are assessing. So this involves capturing narratives through interviews and focus groups. Observation is used not to count frequencies but to take notes of what is happening in the classroom. The major issues with this approach is the smaller sample size that is required. It is not feasible to interview 400 students, but perhaps 20 is doable. In contrast, conducting a survey with 400 students should not be a challenge for a scientific evaluator. Furthermore, there are questions as to the objectivity of the results. Since qualitative data is processed by the researcher, their own perspective can filter what they report when they share the perspectives of the respondents. In contrast, scientific approaches are more objective in that computer processes and reports the results. So, in conclusion, instead of having a bias towards scientific or humanistic approaches to curriculum evaluation, it is better to look at the context of what needs to be evaluated and determine the most appropriate approach. It should be the context and not the preference of the evaluators that should decide which direction to take. In many situations, a mixture of both approaches may be appropriate, but this involves more or much more work and complexity. Now let's move on to the third approach, which is intrinsic approach. The intrinsic approach is used to assess the overall quality of the curriculum. This involves looking at the various components of curriculum design, such as the scope, sequence, articulation, balance, and other aspects. Aspects of curriculum development are also assessed, which means examining the teaching methods, content, and learning experiences. However, initially, the criterion of evaluation is not determined but emerges after the process begins. The intrinsic approach not only examines the value of the curriculum but also how well a given curriculum reaches its goals and objectives. This involves collecting some form of data, whether quantitative or qualitative. As such, most evaluators normally approach evaluation with some of the characteristics of the intrinsic approach. So the evaluators merely answer the question, how good is the curriculum, instead of evaluating it on any criteria. An individual would study and act by examining the following aspect: the design of the bit, the material used, the weight, distribution, the shape, and fit of the handle. So people assume that an axe of such dimensions would cut trees, but they do not try it directly. So, intrinsic evaluation of curricula implies that evaluators study the content, its sequence, organization, accuracy, learning experiences provided. They believe that with accurate content and organization, student learning would be stimulated. So, most of the time, evaluators tend to neglect the concept of intrinsic evaluation. Instead of asking the question, how good is the curriculum? They ask, how well does the course or curriculum achieve its goals? So educators must, however, establish the worth of the curriculum, its goals, objectives, and related content. And the last one we have here, payoff approach. Payoff evaluation occurs when the effects of the delivered curriculum are examined and its worth has been established. The effect of the curriculum on learners can be determined since this evaluation involves judgments based on pre-test, post-test scores, or experimental group tests and control group tests and other parameters. Apart from students, its effects can be examined on teachers, parents, and administrators. This allows evaluators to measure the attainment of objectives by learners, which intrinsic evaluators cannot gauge. In the payoff approach, clear evaluation criteria are set from the outset. Normally, evaluators look at the impact of the curriculum on its stakeholders, which often include students, teachers, parents, and administrators. This approach to evaluation is among the most popular in education because of the clear criteria which make data collection smooth and efficient. On the other hand, supporters of intrinsic evaluation counter that outcomes of the curriculum do not actually show up because the present testing, instruments, and scoring procedures are laced with their shortcomings. They also feel that to examine the full worth of a curriculum, the material should be looked at directly rather than at students' test scores. Okay, now the next question would be which approach to use? The intrinsic approach may be the most useful when it is unclear exactly what the stakeholders want to know. In other words, it is useful for exploratory purposes. Nobody is sure where they are going, and the intrinsic approach helps to set up a map of strengths and weaknesses within a program. From there, other approaches can be used to refine the evaluation if necessary. The payoff approach is best when the evaluation team knows exactly what it wants to know. So, clear evaluation questions and criteria have been set, and it is only a matter of answering the questions or assessing the level at which the curriculum meets the criteria by collecting data. So, as such, the purpose is not to declare one approach superior to the other, but to keep in mind the context when deciding which tool to use. The next subtopic is using the result of evaluation. Why there is a need to evaluate a curriculum. An evaluation is needed at the end of a line or cycle. Planning, designing, and implementing are useless without evaluation. So here are some reasons for curriculum evaluation. Identifies the strengths and weaknesses which will be the basis of intended plan, design, or implementation. Next, at the middle of the curriculum development, it can tell if the design or implemented curriculum can produce or is producing the desired result. Third, it will guide whether the result have equaled or exceeded the standards. It is labeled as success. And the last one, it provides information necessary for teachers, schools, managers, curriculum specialists for policy recommendation that will enhance achieve learning outcomes. So we have here the needs for assessment, monitoring, terminal assessment, and the basis for decision making. What could be the actions of the school after getting the results of the curriculum evaluation? So to answer that, let's try to have these three questions. What will we retain? What are the strengths of the curriculum we can continue to take into the future? Next, what needs to be addressed in terms of being poorly evaluated? Example, classrooms too small, furniture needs changing, insufficient digital resources, and etc. Next question, what needs to be modified? Are there factors in the curriculum that are acceptable but need to be improved? Example, the teaching method may be very effective in certain parts of the course, but not in others. From the above, you can then work out the strengths and the weaknesses of the course and what needs to be changed for next time. To end this, let me just quote this. Curriculum evaluation should not just be measured in terms of student success rates. That is assessment rather than evaluation. Thank you very much.